And welcome back, everyone, to yet another edition of Going for Two, presented by our dear friends here at Home Field Apparel. I am your host. My name's Matt Brown. I publish the Extra Points newsletter. I'm joined here, as always, by my colleague and co-host, Bryan Fischer. Bryan, we are almost through the end of the season. How are we holding up right now?
It doesn't feel like the end of the season. You know, I know everybody kind of looks at those calendar tick marks as we kind of move forward and we get into the kind of thick of things. But we got the World Cup coming up. We got still college football still has plenty of games to play with huge implications in terms of the college football playoff and beyond. We got coaches being hired now. We got coaches being fired. This is kind of the meat of the season, if you ask me, in terms of just kind of crazy news stories. So although it might be winding down on the calendar, there's still plenty going on across college athletics.
There's honestly this kind of section is usually the busiest time of the year, even without the World Cup, because we have postseason for Olympic sports. This is one of the couple of weeks when you have the overlap between college basketball and college football. Some of the biggest games here. We are both headed in. We're both hitting the road, but we're definitely going in
starkly different weather patterns.
Yeah,
I guess.
I want to let's talk about this really quick, and then we can. I want to. There's a few maybe more localized things from this week that I want to talk about that are not the biggest news stories. If you are unaware, we are recording this here on a Tuesday evening. On Thursday morning, I am leaving Chicago and flying to Bozeman, Montana, and I'm not going there because College Game Day is going. College Game Day is following me. I bought this ticket like a month ago, which is critical because, Bryan, guess how much it costs right now to get in ticket price for Montana State?
I'll go north of 200.
It is north of, last time I checked, which was this morning on StubHub, the cheapest ticket is $370.
Which might have been the case even if Game Day had not been there. I think we should probably put that in, that this means so much to that state and to these two schools. So I think there's that you add in that the implications in the FCS poll, both teams are ranked in the top 15. So this is a big game otherwise, but the Game Day circus coming to town definitely adds a bit of an element or two to this matchup.
Yeah, it's huge for playoff reasons. It's huge because it's a massive local rivalry, and I wanted to go to write an explainer and highlight this particular game and why it's a unique rivalry within all of college athletics, because most people don't have the opportunity to spend some time in Montana. But it's also an open secret that both of these schools, and especially the Big Sky, openly coveted getting College Game Day to come to this thing. It's been a multi-year campaign. They're going. So I'm going to be on the ground. I'm going to meet with the College Game Day people on Friday. I should be talking with one of the lawmakers at Montana that was like literally trying to like cajole ESPN into coming, and also what this means from an FCS big picture perspective. So look for some photos from this event. You'll be able to find them on my Twitter account, and there should be multiple newsletters coming out on Sunday and the beginning of next week. You alluded to this, Bryan, though. I believe the typical temperature when I'm going to be there is going to be like 8. Like and Chicago's cold, and I have cold weather clothes, and it's going to be fine, but I am going to complain the entire time.
See, I don't mind the cold weather, but there's that certain threshold where it is like the when you're in the single digits for sure. I feel like the coldest place I ever get to go is like Minneapolis in the winter. Where you're flying through there, or you're doing a story through there, and it's just that biting, windy cold, and
yeah,
you're gonna experience a little bit of that there in Montana.
It's trash. Like I'm a little bit of a fat guy. Like I've got some insulation. You think it would be okay for a little bit, and I've lived in the Midwest for most of my life. Yeah, I'm looking at, I think on Saturday it's going to be the highest for a couple of days, high of 28. Please God, I hope that there's some heat in this press box.
I already saw some Game Day folks complaining, so you're not alone in that front.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know. Don't tell our boss this yet. I don't know if I'm going to be out there at 4:30 in the morning on that Saturday for the entire thing, right? Because that is, if my eyelashes are freezing, it's probably not here for me. You are not going to be there, though. You are going to be someplace much warmer of another game of significant import.
Well, it was even more significant before UCLA lost, yes, but we'll be out at the Rose Bowl for USC UCLA, and a nice high of 72, I believe, on Saturday there in Pasadena. So I won't mention that again, but yeah, nice
Yes,
normal
you
condition.
will.
It'll be, it's an evening game, 5 o'clock kick in Pacific, so it'll get down into the 40s and 50s, so it's always that surprising chill at the Rose Bowl. I always covering a lot of games on New Year's Day. It's like that evening chill. It can get cold, especially for those that are in and around Southern California for most of their lives.
If I understand this correctly, UCLA has excuse me, struggled pretty significantly to sell tickets and get people to come to these games. This is a sellout, right?
A sellout for
An
UCLA
actual.
games.
Okay.
The actual Rose Bowl itself, when you're talking about the January 1st, the granddaddy of them all, yeah, you're talking about 93,000 actual fans, and that is packed to the gills. And when you're talking about UCLA games, because there's some tarps, there's some sections kind of roped off a little bit. Obviously, they haven't sold anywhere near that. I think their highs are in the 50,000s at that. And this game, I mean, it is a big game in terms of Pac-12 implications. USC can clinch a trip to Las Vegas for the Pac-12 title game with this one. Obviously, there's tons of intercity complications, but yeah, 70,000 plus will be there at the Rose Bowl. I can't wait for that atmosphere. Big for UCLA. I know Martin Jarman and the rest of the athletic department have been made a huge priority to really make sure that they can do the outreach right and get those tickets out there for a lot of fans that want them. And I think their efforts have been a slow go starting off in that non-conference schedule, but they've built up to a pretty big place. And it's not often you get the Rose Bowl rocking for a UCLA game, but it should be. And let's face it, there will be plenty of USC ticket holders there as well.
Yeah, the thing that kind of stood out to me besides the tarp situation, and I have not covered a regular season matchup for anything at UCLA yet. Hopefully that changes at some point. Is that they were saying more than 16,000 student tickets have been distributed, and that's been one of the big challenges for this program, has been finding ways to get students to show up, given that the Rose Bowl is not on campus and there's a lot of other things going on, and you're facing price constraints and the challenge, the not so attractive non-conference schedule, and the fact that UCLA football has just been kind of whatever for a little while. All of those things makes it hard to make this a destination. We'll see what happens on Saturday, but the initial reports indicate it not only is going to be very full, but it's going to be full of people who are emotionally invested in this game, which I think makes compelling television. You've got the red versus the blue. You have a game that has not really been common over the last 10, 15 years for both teams to be really good when this is happening.
I was thinking back to kind of the last time these two programs were really truly nationally relevant. Probably 06, I would say a little bit back then. I was covering USC at the time. I remember I was ready to check out because that if they'd won that game, they would have gotten sent to the national title game. They lost 13-9, I believe was the score there. Big hit from Ray Maluga, I believe, on the UCLA quarterback, and and they ended up losing, and so USC, I believe, just got stuck, there at the Rose Bowl. So, fun times there. There was the 05 matchup, certainly, where both teams kind of came in with top 15. I think they're in the top 15, top 10 aspirations maybe for UCLA there. I know USC obviously was on that historic run, and then they just kind of ran right over the Bruins in that one, and it wasn't competitive there with Carl Durrell as the coach of the Bruins. But there's been times, and I think this is actually one of the more interesting rivalries because way back in the day, this did get a lot of coverage. In terms of those rare national games on ABC or CBS, you used to be able to watch USC and UCLA. And so that's why when I talk with family members in Texas or wherever, yes, USC Notre Dame, of course, but there was also a lot of focus on UCLA and USC back in the day, and that was from a lot of these inner city matchups.
I have to admit, I don't have very deep personal memories of those. I'm sure that they happened. I don't remember them being as big of a deal culturally where I was growing up, but I'm excited. And I'm excited to hear your report from the ground about what this is like when there's some really meaningful stakes.
I mean, it's so meaningful. My Fox colleagues flipped from we got Gus and Joel on the primetime game instead of the big noon game. So I think that kind of tells you there's a lot more interest in this matchup. And, it's kind of set against the backdrop of certain things going around UCLA. They have a Regents meeting this week as well. So there's a lot kind of happening around these two schools. And I think a very interesting perspective on the game in the Pac-12 just given that they are the two schools leaving. And at the same time, really the entire conference is down to one hopeful for the CFP and in USC. So like you're kind of sort of rooting for USC to get it done just in terms of the revenue and the prestige and people talking about the Pac-12. I think for a lot of folks, there's still that thing in the back of their mind that says, "Oh wait, they're still leaving. They left us," and so it's like, yeah, if they get a bad call that goes their way, nobody's too upset about it in Pac-12 territory.
Yeah, it's a little bit harder for me, I think, to legitimately imagine a world where like an Oregon State fan is like has this game up on the second screen and going, "Boy, I hope USC makes the college football playoff." Like I understand the math, but hurt feelings there beyond just this change. I am glad that you mentioned the Regents meeting. For those that have not been following this super closely, you normally, when a school has the press conference and officially announces that they're changing conferences, that's mostly the end of it. But the UCLA situation has been a little bit different. There's a quick clarification. USC is a private school. State of California and any kind of public regency that can't really do anything to force them to remain in the conference. Like theoretically, I guess the federal government could decide to we're going to pull FAFSA money, but they're not going to do that, right? However, UCLA, public institution, and there is some concern here as to whether this move will damage not just UCLA student athletes and UCLA students, but also potentially the budget and finances of UC Berkeley. Both part of the same university system. It's not common for two schools in the same university system that share governing bodies for one to move to a different conference and not the other. It does happen, but it's not super common. So there was a question of, will UCLA's Regents do anything about this? When I first wrote about this topic, right after the move was broken, the announcement was broken, I talked to a couple of professors, not in the UC system, but who studied California politics, and I've studied California higher education. And the consensus that I got back then was, it's good politics to complain about this, and it would make sense to haul in UCLA's brass for a bunch of embarrassing committee meetings and throw a temper tantrum, but it's highly unlikely that the Regents would actually prevent the move. And part of that was this idea that they don't actually have the power. California's UC system is a little bit different from other states in that their constitution spells things out about how autonomous these university systems are supposed to be. Then the Regents get together and they say, well, actually, even if we have delegated this authority to these schools before, we can still take it back, and we could prevent this if we wanted it to. And that is a long way of saying here that on Thursday, I believe the 17th of this week, they're going to meet, and they've actually released some of the conversations and some of the data leading up to that meeting. Brian, have you had a chance to look at what the UCLA student survey data said, or what some of the math that the school's preparing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was always a lot of discussion, especially coming out of the past Regents meeting where they were asking some questions and there was not a whole lot of data surrounding this. Obviously, there's a bit of a competing narrative from the Pac-12. George Kliavkoff had put it out there. He hadn't spoken to anybody that was in favor of this move at UCLA. Well, as it turns out, they did do some student surveys and all that, and that really is not the biggest concern for them. I think they had cited some of the issues that they foresee about UCLA moving to the Big Ten. Yes, travel costs, number one. Increased travel times, I believe, is number one. Missed class time, number two. They also mentioned, is competition in cold weather a big deal for you? Well, about half of them said yes, it might be. So there's other things in there, but they also said, it can bring increased exposure, increased TV opportunities. Obviously, you're talking about potential name, image, and likeness, opportunities increasing as not only a school based in LA, but the fact that you are joining a national conference with big brands like Ohio State, like Michigan, and competing on bigger stages. But I think the overall kind of sentiment was that UCLA students, at least student athletes that participated in the survey, they were okay with it. This is not something that they are super anti-against, and they're gonna pick at this Regents meeting or anything like that. But they see some of the benefits that are going to be part of this move, and I think that's going to be very notable. And they also kind of underscored going into this week's game against USC that really their biggest rival is USC. Going across town, they wanted to keep that more than they wanted to keep a rivalry with Cal Berkeley, which is kind of the other thing that the Regents are going to be considering at this meeting.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out, right? If UCLA goes to the Big Ten, they will likely be able to continue to play Cal or Stanford on an out-of-conference basis in most sports most of the time.
I've talked with some people at the athletic departments. They generally, I think, once there's some of the animosity, this is not going to be a Texas A&M type of animosity between these schools. I mean, David Shaw told me about a month ago that he anticipates playing USC and UCLA at some point in the near future. It might not just in terms of the schedules not working out. Yeah, it might take a couple of years because these things get scheduled out so far in advance. But there's probably going to be some sort of rotation amongst the 4 California schools to get back, play each other. These are long-standing rivalries. I mean, these are rivalries that date back 100 years, like you said. So they want to keep playing them, and they will, and that's not that big of a deal, I think, for the administrators and for the athletes themselves.
On that point, though, it is worth noting that if presumably the Big Ten is likely to maintain a 9-game conference schedule in this format when they bring everybody in there. USC already has an annual non-conference game with Notre Dame. And the idea of being able to then play UCLA and Notre Dame and then a Big Ten schedule in football, probably not happening. You might be able to get or not every year.
I wouldn't say that. I feel like the difficult part of thinking about it like that is that we are moving to an expanded CFP. Like that is done, that is happening. And so like your calculus does change a little bit to where, what, those marquee games, they bring in the additional media exposure. And I think from a committee standpoint, they're supposed to be rewarded, playing a Notre Dame every year. And we've seen times where let's face it, Notre Dame is not always up at a high. They're not always in that CFP contention like they have been in the last couple of years. They're certainly not this year, but even though they're ranked in the top 25. So at the same point, I think it's not as big of a deal breaker for USC. Yeah, are the other 2 non-conference games likely to be your Fresno States, your San Jose States, those type of Mountain West or even lower tier teams? Absolutely. I think that's going to be the kind of standard practice there because they know what's coming. But we've seen Georgia adjust their non-conference schedule, anticipating CFP expansion in the future, knowing that you got to play additional Power 5 opponents. And the flip side is, and it's also mentioned in this report for UCLA, the fact that you're getting bigger brands to come to your place means you get to sell more tickets. And that has been something that UCLA has struggled with. We mentioned it at the top of the show. They anticipate, the Wisconsin folks coming in, getting a game at the Rose Bowl, being able to sell more tickets for those type of matchups. And that's going to increase their bottom line even further. So they like, from UCLA's perspective, certainly a little bit less so from USC's perspective, they're going to like those big brands coming to LA in the near future.
I'm sure UCLA will, because there's a lot of Wisconsin and Ohio State and Michigan fans and grads that live in Southern California. And those first couple of games, would not be surprised if even in the Rose Bowl, UCLA's not getting a whole lot of home field advantage from all these people that now suddenly get a chance. I mean, we saw this happening with Maryland and Rutgers when they would go play premier programs like Penn State and Michigan and Ohio State. Like, I've covered multiple Ohio State and Maryland games, and Ohio State has brought in 60% of that crowd every single time. There's a lot of other Buckeyes in PG County.
Oh, as you saw a couple of weeks ago, I mean, even going to a regular school like Northwestern, Ohio State has a ton of fans there at Ryan Field. So this happens all the time for Big Ten schools, and it will be no difference for the LA schools once they join the league.
I think the other kind of, speaking of money, portion of this report that stuck out to me is now we have, at least according to UCLA, a little bit of quantifiable data about how much, not just the increased travel costs, but the increased supplemental cost to support that travel. And I'm looking here at the actual.
I mean, UCLA says, I just got it pulled up right in front of me. They anticipate between 9 and 10 million, 9.1 and 10.3 million in new costs.
Costs.
Charter flights. I think it was interesting that they wanted to add additional mental health professionals to campus. So they wanted to say, they said that's going to be another $300,000 a year that they anticipate easily being able to pay for because of the increased revenue in terms of media rights. Yes, there's going to be increased nutrition, which they listed at nearly $3 million, which is funny thinking back. If you go back to kind of the early days of the Chip Kelly era, where they're serving sushi and
they're not skimping on food costs, much to the chagrin of maybe some bean counters at that school. All this makes complete sense. It's between 4 and 5 million just for the flights alone, which are going to increase charters, then all of these other costs. Now, if theoretically, all of those numbers are accurate. And I will say, between us friends here and everyone listening, I think it would not be unreasonable to err on actually inflating some of these, given that food, airplane fuel, and some of these commodities are stuff that is especially susceptible to inflation, and these are things that have jumped up more for other athletic departments. If all that, even if all that's true, you're still making way more money from the college football playoff revenue and the Big Ten television deal. If theoretically, as has been speculated by some commentators here, that the UC Regents say, okay, UCLA, you can make this move, but you need to pay UC Berkeley $10 million a year, $15 million a year, then it gets a little bit more complicated. I not to the point where I think you would say, don't do this, but to the point where it's not so much an enormous financial windfall anymore, and that would complicate matters a little bit. So let me ask you this, based on what you have heard and the people that you have talked to, are you expecting the UC Regents to take any adverse action in any way towards UCLA leaving?
I would put it at maybe just a 10% chance. You know, I think it's pretty low that they would actually kind of fully block this move. Whether they end up doing, like you said, the stipend, I think there's too much unknown with the Pac-12 media rights situation, and they kind of allude to this in UCLA's report, that they're going to be able to put a number on it, you know, or put a percentage on it, you know, and say you got to send X number of dollars to Berkeley. I think that would be a hard sell, especially from a legal standpoint, in terms of you know, why is this campus getting that? It could get challenged in court. You know, I think ultimately nothing much ends up happening other than this getting rubber stamped. We never know with these Regents, especially given that you know, athletics is not necessarily based on some of their questioning at previous meetings, their forte, right? So
Yeah.
I think you got to keep that in mind. I think earlier, you know, a couple months ago, I probably would have said, yeah, you could definitely see something like a $10 million going from UCLA to Cal, and that makes the math a little bit difficult, you know, where it's a little closer from staying in the Pac-12 versus going to the Big Ten. But I think ultimately I've talked with enough folks that that might not end up being the case. You know, maybe it's a requirement to where you end up having to play Cal a certain number of times to where they can kind of keep the home revenues, and you can still maintain some of those ties. Could there be something along those lines? Sure. I think that might end up being the kind of compromise here, but I think it's being less and less likely that UCLA, in terms of the actual dollars and cents of it making you know, sense to them, is they're just not going to end up having to do too much there out of this meeting, at least.
I think I agree. I have not talked to anybody, any attorney, any higher education professional, anybody that is in any of the athletic departments, either in the Big Ten or the Pac-12, that thinks that there's a real chance that UCLA could be prohibited from joining. And similarly, I have heard less optimism or feeling that there's going to be even a significant tax. And another reason for this, and I wrote about this earlier, is there is a concern that in the event that the university system says you can't do this, or the Regents said to do this, there's going to be, I want to use the industry specific correct term here, a shit ton of litigation. Litigation involving commercial properties, litigation involving vendors, litigation from university officials towards the governor or the governing system at all, especially if they were operating on the assumption that this is authority that cannot be actually used. This is the kind of thing that could end up in the California Supreme Court. And if you are a few leaders that do not want additional conflict, if you don't like litigating some of these things here in public,
That is
the politics
absolutely the
get messy.
case with
Yep.
the two chancellors involved in this, at both Cal and UCLA. They would rather this fight, if you will, to be taken out, you know, away from the cameras, away from the discussion points and in media and podcasts like this. That they don't want any of that. And I think both chancellors would love to have some sort of solution done behind doors. I don't think that's obviously going to be the case, but they would love for the conflict to go away, and whatever makes that easier for everybody. I think they would absolutely want that. They do not want a long drawn out fight, because they don't want to go through the legal process. They don't want to be called in front of these committee meetings or anything like that. That is absolutely not what they want to do.
Unquestionably, they don't want to deal with a bunch more requests from people like me. Nobody involved in this process is thinking, you know what this needs is more Gavin Newsom. That's what this. No one's calling for that. So we'll see. We'll get some clarity in a couple of days, and I think that clarity will then make it much easier for us to get more information about what the finality of the Pac-12 media deal, the finality or timetable for potential realignment or expansion from the Pac-12. This is sort of one of the events that needs to be put into the rearview mirror before we can move on. There's one other thing here that I in the California system that I did want to talk about. But before we do that, I want to talk about our sponsor here real quick. That is, of course, our dear friends at Home Field Apparel. You know, Home Field Apparel sells UCLA stuff.
Absolutely. I believe you have some in your closet somewhere, right?
I do. They also sell USC stuff. They make things for multiple University of California institutions and mid-majors, high majors, and low majors throughout the country. The most comfortable, unique apparel out there. Beyond just the most affordable, the most comfortable, the most interesting, unique, officially licensed collegiate retro apparel, we are nigh approaching a pretty significant shopping day. That is Black Friday, and we have a different promo code, a different offer to tell you about, so you could save some stuff, some money when you go buy a bunch of home field stuff, which I know is what you're going to be doing here. The Black Friday sale starts November 18th. That is, as we are recording this Friday. It runs through the 27th, so it's actually like Black Fridays. It's not just one day. You don't have to camp out at 3:30 in the morning.
Well, I've already seen like Black Friday sales dating to last month. So you know what? I commend Home Field for at least going from Friday to Black Friday itself. So they at least are sticking with that front.
This is the kind of holiday creep that's acceptable. The important thing is we don't have to camp out Cabela's with like a rifle or something to go through a stampede. You can do it from your sweatpants. Ideally, your home field sweatpants, your Doggers. So it goes from the 18th to 27th. You can get 20% off the entire dang site. Use promo code Black Friday. That's all one word. It's the biggest discount that Home Field offers the entire year. It's a bigger discount than the typical Extra Points discount. It's not just for your first order. If you bought a bunch of home field stuff, and by God, I look at our audience metrics, I know that you have. Use promo code Black Friday between the 18th and the 27th. Save 20% off your entire order.
Things will go quickly, so make sure you get your orders in early.
You should, because I don't want to say they have a very good shipping and logistics department, but they are going to get swamped, and everyone's going to get swamped. The postal department's going to get swamped. Your UPS driver is going to get swamped. Buy your stuff early. Subscriptions to Extra Points, in my opinion, make really good holiday gifts, and you don't have to worry about shipping. But this stuff is much more comfortable than a subscription to Extra Points. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code Black Friday. Save 20% off of your order. Speaking of sponsorship agreements, I want to talk about one that has gone not nearly as well as our long and profitable and deeply beloved commercial relationship with Home Field Apparel. You're not a big crypto guy, right, Brian?
No, I cannot be described as that in any stretch of the imagination.
I didn't think that you were. Some folks out in California are. If you are an astute follower of Cal Berkeley athletics, you might remember recently that the university sold the naming rights to the field at Memorial Stadium to FTX. So the Cal Memorial Stadium is supposed to be known as FTX Field at California Memorial Stadium. FTX is was a gigantic crypto exchange. You might have heard about this, even if you're not somebody that's on Reddit or on Twitter all the time. FTX has completely imploded. It is one of the biggest, not just crypto collapses, but maybe potentially one of the biggest financial scandals since Enron, since Lehman Brothers. Like, people may go to jail for this. But it was like an enormous collapse. And a lot of crypto companies, not just FTX, but a lot of them became very aggressive in the sports space. They were aggressive in naming rights for stadiums. The Los Angeles Lakers play at Crypto.com, different company, similar industry. The Miami Heat played at the FTX Arena, I want to say, and they've been involved in other commercial sports entities. Also, major sponsors for lots of digital companies. They buy a lot of ads. It's like them and sports gambling are like two of the industries that kind of propped up sports blogs and sports websites a lot over the last year or so. That's going away. And now we have a couple of specific questions here for Cal. And I'm likely to write about this. I've talked to a couple of people because it's especially problematic for Cal because they need the money. every Power 5 athletic department is always looking for more revenues, but it's at some places, because of your television deal, because of your sponsorship rates, because of other revenue, you are not going to be in a state of crisis if $900,000 doesn't show up or something. Cal, I think it is fair to say, is in one of the most precarious situations among Power 5 athletic departments under the best of circumstances, given it's been challenging for them to sell tickets. They've been pretty lousy at flagship sports for the past couple of years. They had an absolutely enormously expensive stadium renovation that they have not been able to pay off. And so, debt has been a major problem. You were tied up with Under Armour, who canceled your deal when you had signed a bunch of money up front. This even happened to one of the sponsors of their field, right? It was Kaboom, the mobile game developer, was a previous sponsor of this field. That deal didn't work out and finish as planned here. And so now the open question is, what happens next? Because they're taking the signage off the field. Like, no one is going to be keeping FTX anything because this company might not exist anymore. The questions we have left are, one, how much money is Cal out? Because do you remember from this deal what made this deal unique besides the fact that it was a crypto exchange working with the college football field? There was something very unique about the way this transaction was set up.
Well, they ended up taking the payment from FTX. Well, not necessarily directly from Cal to
Right.
Cal. Was the payment from FTX was supposed to be done in crypto. That was done through their MMR partner Learfield. So they gave the crypto to Learfield. Learfield converted that into cash, and that's what ultimately Cal got. Obviously, this is a multi-year sponsorship. We've seen this with the case of Miami. I was not completely sure if Cal's deal was structured similarly. It didn't seem like it based on everything that I was reading. You have more information on that because you kind of been digging into some of the documents. But in the case of FTX Arena down in Miami, they actually paid quite a bit up front in terms of the actual cash value of things. So Miami and the city of Miami or county of Miami-Dade, they actually made out pretty well. They got like $19 million from what typically was about like a $7 million a year sponsorship agreement. And that's for their stadium naming right. So like they actually made out pretty well in this. Cal did not necessarily make out quite as well in terms of just the lost revenues going forward. But look, this is a big thing. And to your earlier point, a lot of these crypto companies have been heavily involved in the sports space. I find it is very interesting that, as we approach the World Cup, you're going to hear the term sports washing a lot when it comes to that. Just using sports as legitimate, kind of using that and coasting off of it for legitimacy. And crypto has been a huge player in the sports arena doing just that. You mentioned crypto.com. FTX has been big. The Warriors just had a promotion with FTX, bobbleheads, and so they had to kind of take those away, and they're not doing anything in the future. So a lot of these crypto companies have been able to see sports as a value driver in terms of their legitimacy. And sports companies and sports entities, not only on the professional side, but as we're talking with Cal here on the college athletic side, are jumping 2 feet in because they understand that there is cash to be made on their end. And sometimes it backfires, like in the case of Cal and their field here.
Yeah, and this is one of the other big questions, right? So my best guess, and I hope to have more information about this later, and if I do, I will publish it on extrapointsmb.com. I don't think Cal's going to be out the entire amount of money here. It's unclear how much was upfront and how much is spread out over a year, but they're going to get some of this money back. And presumably, most likely, they will be able to sell the naming rights again. I was talking with some professors that I met at the Charlotte Marketing Conference. There was a couple of papers about sports rights. And one of the challenges, there's 2 challenges as you take this back into the market, the 2 things that Cal is going to face. One is generally your rights are only most valuable the first time that you sell them, because every time that you go and you change the name, there's going to be consumers that are still only going to call it by its original name. And so like the utility that the sponsoring company gets declines every single time. I literally don't remember what the name is of the current Cleveland Guardians ballpark. Like in my head, because I am 35 going on 70, like in my head, I still think of it as Jacobs Field, which was what it was originally called. It took me a long time to go, oh, it's not Quicken Loans Arena where the Cavaliers play. Or it is that. It's not Gund Arena, named after like the old owner, because I said that so many times. We're going to be calling where the Steelers play Heinz Field, the collective we, for a long time. No matter how much money.
You still hear that on the pregame shows. They'll say Heinz Field. It's like, and even think folks that at the networks, they're getting paid quite pretty
Yeah.
fitting. They just skip right over it.
Inertia is a powerful force. Now, as a field is different than a stadium. It's right, and I don't, and it's not like FTX was the sponsor for this for very long. But if this is your third or fourth sponsor for the field, it might be more challenging to get the amount of money that you're looking for. There's also the fact that the utility and like the reputation of this asset, if it has now been tainted by two different companies that didn't work out, there may be a reputational tax as you take that asset into the marketplace. It's not always the case. Like where the Astros play, there used to be Enron Field. And of course, that it took a long time to go get that torn down. There were, as I understand it, from talking to some of these professors, lots of people still bid on that, even though it was Enron Field. Eventually, Minute Maid, got the rights, and they paid quite a bit of money for it. But I don't necessarily think it will be just turnkey. Like, oh, okay, let's go put up the posting on, the naming rights equivalent of Career Builder and see who bids. It may be a little bit more complicated, which is problematic because this is a school right up there with Rutgers and right up there with Oregon State and Washington State, who really needs this money. It could not happen at a worse time, and quite frankly, like a worse kind of company. Because given that this is Silicon Valley-ish, this is Bay Area, this is the heart of the tech industry. There can be a lot of jokes about this for a long time.
Well, I mean, it made sense, for Cal's perspective and certainly from FTX perspective. This is a tech company in the Bay Area. You're going to recruit a lot of Cal grads, and so you can understand the marketing synergies here. And I mean, a 10-year, $17.5 million deal. I think obviously the school was very particular in terms of they were going to get paid in cash. They were going to get their $17.5 million, no matter what the value of the Bitcoin or the Ethereum or whatever. Learfield, their MMR partner, ended up getting paid. They were going to get their cash. So at least they were kind of covered on that front. The other thing that I keep in mind, that the reason that is particularly damaging at this time for the Bears right now, is the fact that it's pretty soft advertising market, whether it's on pretty much anything, much less naming rights, where you're talking about multi-million-dollar spends. And so as much as they might be okay on the front end of this deal, as much as some of the other FTX arenas and cryptos.coms and all those places might be okay in terms of, hey, they maybe got a little bit more upfront and that's already cash in the bank. Where they're going to the market now is a lot different than it was 2 or 3 years ago, when people wanted to sponsor these type of places. And I think that's going to be the other thing that, whether if they're looking to do a long-term deal, which these typically are, in the 5 to 10 year range, they might get dinged a little bit in terms of the actual value over time. And that's where probably is the most concerning thing if you're in that Cal athletic department right now.
That is a great point, and you're absolutely right. And this is something I've honestly tried to flag a little bit on the NIL beat too. And I pay I personally pay close attention to this because this is still part of how Extra Points makes money. But as we head into a potential probable recession or some kind of economic slowdown, generally one of the first areas where companies cut expenses is in marketing, and especially in really either very expensive or more speculative, unproven advertising ventures. If you're gonna limit your budget, you're gonna try to stick to what actually works. What we're already seeing is that programmatic advertising, like the big display ads that kind of run 3/4 of the internet, that's already in decline. My concern, beyond just this is a softer market for maybe big ad spends anyway, maybe Cal has to wait a year before finding somebody else. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world if you're just Cal Memorial Stadium. But I think this might be a factor in NIL space too. Not that I think, the advertising market's down, so Auburn boosters aren't going to pay as much money. Like, the booster donor side, I'm coming around to the idea that's almost impervious to economic conditions, so long as like the rich people have money. But if you're a AAA brand considering a national ad campaign, where you might have hired, done deal with 40 different athletes for an NIL, you are less likely to do that now than you were 2 quarters ago. And to the extent of the NIL space or the multimedia rights space that depends on Johnson & Johnson or Chick-fil-A or some other, Skyline Chili or something getting involved in something like this, the economic headwinds are pretty significant. This is not the best time to be going into that. It's for a lot of different reasons.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it's compounded by the fact that because you try to lock in so many long-term deals, like it just can be difficult to kind of budget, when you are, feeling the crunch in other places, your
Yeah.
targets, your big multinational companies are going to be like, we're just not going to be in on this type of bidding. And that's going to allow others, yes, that maybe are less resourced. And you know what you would say, hey, you know what? Maybe we can get in on this at a better price. And so there is
Yeah.
the kind of flip side on that front. I think that at the end of the day, though, at least Cal is kind of saved a little bit by the fact that this is happening at the end of the season. So, you know what? They at least have some time to kind of sort things out. And as much as they're stripping the FTX logo there off the field, this week, I think there will at least be some time, at least, to consider this, go through the naming rights process, work with their conference partners. They'll at least be able to draft a little bit. I think off of the new Pac-12 media rights deal, which should be
Yeah.
announced here in a little bit, and so they can at least go to sponsors and say, hey, look, we're going to have this increased exposure, or we're going to be on Amazon, so you can help sell your product right there, at whatever field it might be. So, like, there are at least some minor things that can help the Bears, but it is a precarious situation that they're going to have to deal with, on top of everything that is going on in college athletics, overall, just in general.
Yeah. Not everybody has a home field apparel. A gigantic, dependable, perfectly aligned flagship sponsor. I hope that everybody can have that. Cal, if you take our home field deal for your football field, so help me, I will baptize you in so many FOIA requests, your clerk won't know what hit him. They're ours. On that note, I think both of us need to go maybe do some packing and go get ready for our week here. Real quick plug. And we're going to be recording this here on Tuesday. We got a couple other things that you may enjoy on Extra Points if you haven't had a chance to read them. Today, I published an interview with the commissioner of the Pioneer Football League. This is an FCS league that does not offer any any football scholarships. Very unlike the Big Sky, very unlike the CAA. This is the league with Dayton and Davidson, Butler, St. Thomas, who is leading the league right now. They have an automatic bid. Wanted to get an idea for what this league is looking to do in a post-transformation era world, transformation committee world, how it fits in with what college sports looks like now relative to maybe a decade ago. Something that I think would be of interest to many of our readers. We also did a free post this week. I don't know if you took this quiz, Brian, but
I got a 7.
you got that makes me feel honestly pretty good. So we did a quiz to see how many schools are ones that we just made up, or ones that have played a men's basketball game against a Division I opponent. Because you're looking through there, the beginning of men's college basketball season is riddled with Division II and NAIA and barely accredited institutions for these low major buy games. And looking through here, I'm like, I'm a degenerate, man. Brian's a degenerate. We've been doing this for a long time. We thought we knew most of these schools. I know a lot of Division II institutions. If you had told me that Champion Christian College was a real place like a week and a half ago, I would not have believed you. So that made me feel pretty good that I was able to make up some schools that sound pretty believable, like Nevada Mines. That one's not real, but you can take the quiz for yourself. Over 3,000 people have. You can find that as well at extrapointsmb.com. Brian, I understand you got a couple other things that you're excited to share as well.
Yeah, have a couple of things up on Fox Sports related to the college football playoff. I know usually we have used this time to plug the head coach that we did this week. Obviously, given the events in Virginia, Bronco Mendenhall, not up for recording an episode as normal, but we will have a special episode with a lot of coaches on the Virginia staff last year, this year, that Bronco knows, to talk about the individuals that were affected by that tragedy. Just a gut wrenching blow. I saw Tony Elliott's press conference before we ended up recording this one. And that is a community that is hurting right now. A lot of coaches that knew all of those kids, that were shot and tragically passed away. We want to kind of celebrate them and celebrate their memory a little bit. And we're going to do that on HeadCoachU this week. You'll look for it on Friday, and hopefully. And so I think that'll be a special episode. Do check that out, and hopefully we can bring a little bit of happiness and memory for some of the those tragic guys that were lost.
I think of all the people that I want to hear from about this, those folks who have such deep ties to that program would be at the top of the list. It's an unthinkable tragedy.
And
And yeah,
it just hit them so hard, like, I
yeah,
mean, you just don't expect to be waking up to that kind of news, right? And, I mean, like, we talk so much on that podcast about recruiting and the types of kids that you get. And, all those guys, they were at Bronco's ranch, riding around on his horses with him. That's part of the deal there at Virginia, when he was the head coach. And so to have those kind of connections, to the personal connections, one-to-one. Yes, it's a team of 100 plus players, but you get to know those guys, and you get to know them through the recruiting process, starting when they're kind of freshmen in high school sometimes, which Tony Elliott spoke about today. So, like,
yeah.
there's a tremendous connection to those that were lost, and hopefully we'll be able to honor them just a little bit this week.
I am looking forward is not exactly the right way to put this, but I want to hear more from people close to that program and close to those young men and talk about their lives and how they fit in there. One of the other, we can kind of close on this. Both blessing of this job and a real struggle is, and I think you would agree. One of the real blessings we have is when you get a chance to even get to spend some time with an athlete on a more meaningful level than just a press conference and get to talk to them a little bit. Almost always you come away impressed, and which is not always the case when you talk to an administrator. I like most of the adults working in this world. I really do. But there are a couple of times I talk to somebody, you're just like, they're full of shit. And that almost never ever happens for the 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds, people that are balancing really difficult demands in school and elite athletic performance and their communities. And this seemed to be the case here with these three young men that really cared about the world around them. And it is a shame that it's easier to understand a full 360 of their lives when something absolutely terrible happens. And it is a reminder that everything that we are doing, this podcast, our businesses, our jobs, and this entire enterprise is built around human beings that have three-dimensional lives and are way more than just people that do something on a Saturday. Hopefully, if we can take one thing from this, it's a reminder of that, and to look for that humanity throughout the entire time that we are involved. On that note, you can find all the work that we're doing on across the D1 Ticker family on both heavy topics and substantially less heavy topics. You can find this show on Apple and Google and Spotify and YouTube. And if your microwave oven downloads podcasts, you can probably get it there as well somehow. Take a screenshot of it if you figure out how to do that. And we will get back in touch with you a little bit later this week once we're on the road. Thanks for listening, everybody.